countrymen, here in defiance of tyranny. You've come to fight as free men. And free men you are. What will you do without freedom? Will you fight? Fight against that? No! We will run! And we will live. Aye. Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
You ready? Let's go. Yeah. For those of you that want to know what we're all about, it's like this, yo. This is 10% luck.
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. First thing I am going to be getting into is something of recent here. Obama administration releasing disturbing photo of Obama depicted as king. This is coming out Ben Swan, and I've seen a whole bunch of other posts coming out about this exact same photo. So, says, last year, United States Senator Rand Paul criticized Obama for acting like a king or monarch as the administration threatened to unconstitutionally bypass Congress on gun control. It seems as though the administration felt the title should stick. The picture depicts King Obama sitting upon the Iron Throne at King's Landing in the ancient kingdom of Westeros from the HBO hit series Game of Thrones. The photo looks as if it was lifted straight from the Onion, however, it is not. The image is a result of Obama's speech at last week's White House Correspondents' Dinner, where he joked about enacting more executive orders. The administration took it upon themselves to create the photo of King Obama, and the official White House Twitter account sent out the tweet before last week's episode aired. Obama sits with the king's crown in his hands, and former King Joeffrey's crossbow sitting on the coffee table. The tweet reads, "The Westeros Wing." Is it a joke? If you call making fun of your truth as a diversionary tactic a joke, then sure, we are all laughing regardless. Obama's countless dead, innocent drone victims are not laughing. Furthermore, those who take their oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States are not laughing either. The image is disturbing for multiple reasons. First, those familiar with the series know all too well the nature of kings found Lannister, it says the kings have all been ignorant, insane, and ruthless murderers. Then again, what more would you expect from a president that boasts about being really good at killing people? Second, the president of the constitutional republic would find such an image appropriate is beyond understanding. Could you imagine if George Bush's administration posted such a picture? Finally, a crossbow sitting on the coffee table of the West Wing. Why didn't the most transparent administration in history just Photoshop a drone in the name of transparency, of course, perhaps they will find this image more suitable for next week's episode. And, it's a game of drones, and if you go to Ben Swan and find the article's titled Obama Administration Releases Disturbing Photo of Obama Depicted as a King, and check out the photo. Let me see if I can drop that in the chat room for people. It's a pretty good photo. Game of drones, and that would be pretty appropriate. I'm gonna have to log into the chat room. Didn't realize I wasn't. Okay, now I should be logged in. Yeah, there we go. So if you're in the chat room, which you can get to the chat room at ucy.tv/ATN, or you can go to atnewsradio.com and chat room with some pretty awesome people, pretty good group of people that you can usually find in the chat rooms, and check out all the great broadcasts here on ucy.tv. Really happy with this network, and could ask for much more. I do have a clip here that I'm going to play. And this time, I actually downloaded this. Kinda got tired of the messing up, and I might end up playing another clip from the internet, but this one came from Adam versus the Man. It's Jeffrey Tucker, Death Blow to the State. And this was something I definitely wanted to be able to play, so I went ahead and downloaded it, and hopefully we have no issues this way.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jeffrey Tucker is the originator, the founding member of Liberty.me and publisher of Laissez-Faire. Out with a news story today. I'm actually really excited about this because this has been a theme in some of our most enlightening conversations, and I always enjoy hearing these futuristic technology, social government interaction topics. But the story today is the peer-to-peer economy, death blow to the state. And you know what? I got to step in before I even turn this over to you, because I'm really excited to have you on. But it sounds like, to a lot of people, radical language. Oh my gosh, people working together is the death blow to the state. And it's like, no, really, that's it. How does that work? Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, hey, Adam, it's really great. I have to say that I think in part my article here was influenced by a lot of your work, you know?
Oh, well, thank you.
If you think back, when you first began broadcasting, I mean, you're kind of the master of peer-to-peer technology, you know? You turn on the camera, you broadcast out to your users have the same power to do the same thing. So they could turn on a camera and broadcast, and you're dealing with...
You know what, give me 1 second, see if I can get this audio a little bit better.
I am Adam versus the Man, death blow to the state.
You think about
Well, no, hold on. I have to like demystify this and explain the process of me inspiring you, because it's like me ripping off your work and rambling about it online, and then bringing you into the conversation, and I spurn like 1 or 2 more thoughts, and you actually like write it up as something intelligent and coherent, which I would normally just take and rip off and read on my show. So.
Well, you know, it's funny. I felt like I had to write this. I've been speaking about this topic for a while now, but I realized I hadn't actually put it down on paper. So The whole thing sort of came to me because I was hanging out. I know what happened. I first took a picture of a stained glass window I thought was pretty and showed it around to my friends, right? Mm-hmm. And then I went over to CVS and I noticed they still had film for sale. And I thought, well, this is strange. We're sort of living like with one foot in the old world and one foot in the new world, and so I began to think like, what is the difference between these worlds? And the difference really comes down to in the past we relied on third-party intermediaries, to connect us with anybody. Now we can make direct connections with people thanks to technology. And we do it so routinely we don't even think about it much, whether it's calling a cab through Uber or, I list a lot of examples of peer-to-peer technology, file sharing online. Bitcoin's obviously a radical version of that, but even the fact that you can make like a movie, yourself and just upload it and reach, billions of people instantly. These are revolutionary technologies. And it's only been I began to look it up. It's only been about 15 years in which this has been possible, which is a tiny, tiny slice of time. And during that time, we've seen like a kind of a crumbling of the consensus over the state. So what this article does is it re-renders the statist enterprise as basically a gigantic third-party based racket.
Hold on. Before we get into this, and maybe this sounds like a side note, but I think this is going to be important later. I want to examine this strange phenomenon that you describe, that at a pharmacy they actually have a whole wall of what is it called? Film? Film. That's 35 millimeter something, right? Like you.
Right.
How does? Tell me, old man, how does this technology work? No, I'm old enough. I'm old enough. But this is like, and I understand I'm not trying to belittle film as an art, because I know there's more to it, and I understand that if you're a fine artist, there's certain things that you can do with film, and I've worked in a dark room before, and I get that. But that's not what we're talking about here. This is people that who are just doing casual photography, and there's still a market for this film processing. These people have smartphones in their pockets that are probably producing better photographs. Or if they spent, if they're going and buying film on a regular basis, keeping CVS, CVS doesn't put that stuff in their store if no one's buying it.
That's right.
People are buying
the
this.
Transition from old to new, it takes a while, right? I mean, it goes much more slowly than you and I would like.
Well, it should be accelerating, right? And what I want to ask is, how does the market tolerate such inefficiency?
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's amazing how the market's able to exist, in this sort of coming and going state all the time. Mm-hmm. It's got its foot in the 20th century and the 21st century at the same time. Like the same store. I mean, I love going to the stores, obviously, right? But they're trying to fob off a bunch of CD players and DVD players on everybody too, but radically declining prices. Even in the store, these were originally $125, and they were trying to get rid of them at $70 and $60,
Walkman, were they selling Walkman there, for cassette tapes?
Cassette tapes.
8-track players, hey, we still got this stock of 8-track players down to, they're $3 each now. It's like an $800 stereo deck, but it's an 8-track player. Sorry, $3.
Yeah, Adam, it's interesting you mentioned that, because they had a huge bargain bin of, 50-cent movies or something like that. You can buy.
Wait, people buy movies?
Hundreds of movies that you can just buy for 50 cents each, which is probably too expensive at this point.
Well,
God,
it's
wonderful, beautiful upheavals, huh?
I mean, from people that, haven't figured out how to download from the Pirate Bay or click over to YouTube, they're still buying, DVDs and physical movies, and I'm almost tempted, here's where I'm a central planner. Stop being stupid, people. Seriously, be more efficient. This is where I want, this is my greatest temptation to statism here is, alright, let's just make this shit illegal. There ought to be a law against film and DVD players and CD players and cassettes and 8-tracks in 2014.
Yeah.
You won't hear me say it, nothing else tempts me to say that, but seriously, this market inefficiency, this is why the government wants to suppress the internet, because it accelerates that process and creates corporate upheaval.
But look, Adam, even I'm kind of obviously really into technology, but even I'm startled, almost every day. I can't believe what happens to me that I didn't really, like, it's obvious once it happens, but before it happens, you don't think about it.
Right.
So an example is that last night, or maybe it's actually like yesterday afternoon, I started thinking about Beethoven, and I thought, I wouldn't mind hearing the Ninth Symphony. It's been a while. So I quickly went to my Google Play, for which I paid $10 a month, and I typed in Beethoven's Ninth, and I immediately got, like, Beethoven Symphonies 1 through 9 performed by Herbert von Karajan. Like, immediately on one screen, I could just click any symphony or any movement and instantly hear, like, one of the finest performances in human history. That 20 years ago I would have had to buy in a box set, CD. And like, even at that moment, I just felt this rush of, oh my God, how is this even possible?
Some people can't handle that.
It's huge. We're in a totally, maybe this is one of the reasons I wrote the article. You just have this sudden realization that we're in a completely different world than we were, 15 or 20 years ago.
Well,
and there
I gotta
are
point out,
profound implications of that.
Jeffrey Tucker doesn't just wear a bow tie. He actually sips martinis out of Liberty.me engraved glasses and listens to classical music. Yeah, he's fucking legit like that. Okay, please continue. Before I get too much of a man crush, finish, please.
No.
Back to the story.
Yeah. So what are the implications, right? I mean, what does it mean? I think politically it's interesting because we're going to be less and less reliant on third parties of all sorts, and that includes the state. Here's another critical thing. When politicians and bureaucrats come along and try to take these things away from us, I mean, they're not going to do it. They're not going to be able to get away with it. People are really, really attached to their P2P structures now in every area of life, and we depend on them fundamentally. We won't go back 10 years. We won't go back 5 years. We won't even go back like 8 months ago, all right? So there's a fundamental intolerance that's developed towards the central planners that are trying to take away our peer-to-peer relationships. Like cities that have tried to ban Uber taxi have had a terrible time of it. Like real protests. Or New York's dealing with this right now with this Airbnb. They're harassing this company that allows people just to rent out the extra space in their home to some like guy coming in, who happens to be coming through town. People don't understand, like, why are the politicians against this? This is a cool thing. So get out of our hair,
Because
so
they're politicians.
That's really important. That changes the debate, I think, over free markets versus statism, right? Because in the old days, free markets were oftentimes just about large corporations that we dealt with, and people are not very sympathetic to corporations. But nowadays, free markets are more about direct human relationships between you and me, and there people get a little bit intolerant towards, the monsters who are trying to prevent our relationships from happening. And so I mentioned two other implications. Another one is that I think it causes us to think more globally. Like when you go to the app economy, which no politician designed, no politician ever imagined, no bureaucrat created, it's like 3 million apps you can download immediately for your phone. You don't even know who made them, where they're from. They could be from Belarus, from San Jose, Costa Rica. It could be from Shanghai. What does it even matter? Nobody cares about this crap anymore. All you care about is having cool stuff. That changes like the nature of the nation state. You see what I mean?
Absolutely. But there's something deeper going on as well. Like even if government was able to keep track of everything that was happening in a peer-to-peer environment, the amount of control exercised is so much lower. I mean, you can't tax it as efficiently. The way that like you can't, like if you have, the traditional business model of government is find the corporate interests, eliminate their competition, get them either and steal part of their income as a protection racket, or let them buy you off and direct that. And when businesses are no longer I kind of go both ways on this in looking at this dynamic, because you can see that there is an atomization. Every individual is now a business. Every individual can connect directly with other service providers, with people in their communities. I think the other thing that's growing up that's so beautiful, even beyond this, and I mean, just having moved to LA and getting to know people here, the gift economy, the barter economy. Yeah. People are just like, well, I like you. Can I help you out? I expect that you'll help me out. And people are so wealthy with today, in general, with today's technology, that they're able to do that. They're, and even if you're living on Skid Row in LA, it's not a food insecure lifestyle. People are capable of comfortable in their ability to survive and feed each other and be fed. And that is like opening up this incredible gift and barter economy that the government can't control. But then I kind of go the other way and see that those are the prevailing, those are much bigger dynamics, but at the same time, in some things, there is a concentration. And that does kind of worry me going the other direction, like you mentioned.
Like what? What's
Google.
the concentration?
Google.
Yeah, but I've thought about this. Why is Google so cool? Why is it growing? It's because it's providing ever more tools for peer-to-peer relationships.
Yes and no. And yes, they're in the business of doing that. Absolutely not. I can't dispute that. But you look at, YouTube. Google bought YouTube. Why does Google is buying up smaller companies and in many ways assimilating them into what it needs to do in order to maintain keep on government's good side and keep paying its taxes, whereas instead, without that, you'd have a greater atomization at the corporate level as well, and you'd see that breaking down and localizing more. And while Google is doing amazing things and providing amazing legitimate services with new technologies, I'm bothered by the fact that under current American corporatism, all of these technologies are being concentrated in the hands of a few. And I have suffered directly as a result of this. I'm not saying pity me or anything like that, right. But I was on YouTube, before it got assimilated into Google, before, all of these new controls and free speech barriers got put on. And it's not free speech because it's private property, but it would be, it would be much more public and there would be competition if it wasn't for that. So, there's got to be some threat to that still that we're dealing with,
so
right?
I agree with this. But here's the deal. Google has to continue to be like slavishly devoted to its customers as far as possible, or they're going to inspire wild competition in the other direction. And people are already working on things like this. I've been spending a good part of the day looking through the new service called MaidSoft. I don't know if you've looked at it, but it's a peer-to-peer app economy that doesn't rely on ISPs or corporate structures at all. And
right. Hold on.
The next wave.
And I will point out, it is far easier now because of the nature of the technology to challenge Google and say, well, I'm going to program that in my basement and I'm going to just put it up on the internet and give it to the world. And that's important too. It's certainly better than, government making sure that we only have 3 major car manufacturers in America. Right. It's certainly less restrictive than that.
The thing is, Adam, that a lot of this is like a process. And that's what I tried to chronicle in my article was like, we're seeing the dynamic take place. And you can see the trajectory of history ever more towards peer-to-peer relationships and away from third-party intermediaries, whether it's corporations or governments that are controlling our lives. And you can see the dynamic at work. I mean, we're obviously not there yet, but the more the public gets attached to these peer-to-peer technologies, the more we're going to insist on our rights to deal with each other in direct exchange relationships based on equal power, And that's kind of an amazing thing. I mean, I think it may be the dominant economic theme of the 21st century. I mean, if the 19th century was all about agriculture, the 20th century was all about big industry, the 21st century is really about peer-to-peer relationships. We're not there yet, but that's what the next 80 years are going to be about. But that implies the breakdown of the structures that we hate so much.
Okay, and I can say, to play devil's advocate, okay, this is going to weaken the government. This is going to minimize its role in controlling the economy, so on and so forth. I can see all that. But death blow to the state, how does this actually play out that way?
Well, so that's a very strong phrase. The reason I use that phrase is because first of all, I really believe it. I think the distributed network is the great tool that we have in our favor. This is an innovation, as I say, it's about 15 years old. It began with basically Napster. That's what popularized it. But what it means is that on any node, the whole service can exist on an infinite number of times. And it cannot be crushed. Like you said earlier, you can always, go into a warehouse and raid it. You can control one corporation by meeting with its board of directors and say, let's make a deal. But if something lives on a distributed network, that means it's potentially infinite number of copies and infinite number of nodes, and there's no central point of failure. At this point, the nation state is basically completely at a loss to control it. And that is a huge, an epic innovation in the history of liberty.
Okay, and I agree, but let me ask the harder question. Maybe you can end this conversation by endorsing my presidential candidacy, but how does this then play out, and how do you actually hope that the state is going to fall? And if I may, I would just suggest that localization is how it's going to happen one way or another. Either governments are going to fall apart from the top down, and even though Crimea is getting assimilated into Russia right now. We see turmoil leads to localization, breakdown of central control leads to atomization of governments, fracturing. We see the global secessionist movement all over the world. There are different, groups of people that want to break away from their centrally controlled state. And I would say it's going to happen one way or another. But can we do this peacefully? Can we have, as I suggest, an orderly dissolution of the federal government and of governments around the world and localize that way? And is this going to lay the groundwork for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you asked really the critical question. I'm very, very interested in this because, even now, you wonder why a lot of parts of the state continue to survive. For example, the post office. Why the hell is that still around? Right?
That's like the least of my concerns.
It's the least, but it's an important symbol. This is an extremely stupid, irrelevant, and ridiculous decision. So why is it still there? And, so I'm tracking this very carefully because if the post office actually becomes to be dismantled at some level, I mean, it's going to happen gradually. Then I think we're going to see a model for that. What's going to happen to the whole state? I mean, what happens to states that just become basically completely irrelevant to our lives, except for being obvious parasites? And I don't mean just to you and me who are ideologically conscious. Right?
No. Thank you for that ideological conscience. I thought you were going to say, unlike people like you and me, who can see that the state is a parasite because we read the news and pay attention.
Yeah, right. It seems very obvious to us, but it's not obvious to the average person. But what happens when it just becomes so completely obvious? And look, the consciousness is dawning. I mean, no matter how you measure it, it's all over the world. I mean, whether it's polls or just whatever. I mean, it's really critical that we're more and more living off these peer-to-peer technologies in our daily lives, every single second. Not just us, people all over the world. As I said, no politician invented the app economy. They didn't invent file sharing. They've actually been the enemy of technology now for 20 years. They've been trying to shut down the internet, trying to control distributed. But here's the thing. Every time they try to do this, it goes crazy and metastasizes the other direction. They try to shut down the Silk Road. Now we've got peer-to-peer Silk Roads that you can download. You start your own Silk Road right there on your laptop at home on a distributed network. I mean, how cool is that? Yeah. They try to shut down online pharmacy. There's more than ever. They tried to shut down file sharing. I used to worry, Adam, that copyright was going to lead to the censorship of 70 years worth of literature. Okay, that was too pessimistic a prediction because I forgot about the fact that people want these books, so therefore they're going to be online. I've yet to find a book that's been printed anytime in the last 70 years that I know about that's not available very easily through piracy. How great is that?
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of peer-to-peer and new technologies and brilliant predictions, you predicted $1,000 Bitcoin by the end of last year. Did you predict that it would come down to where it is now, around $450?
No, I didn't. I mean, people say the right price for Bitcoin is somewhere between zero and infinity. I think
probably.
That's
yeah, something like that. Okay.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I should stop making predictions because I happen to be right on that one. That was really great. It was really amazing. I didn't expect it. Although, I mean, even at 450, it's funny how Bitcoin is, Adam, you've noticed this, right? People get all hopped up and excited when it's going up in price. And then they get kind of depressed and down the dumps when it's going down.
And stop promoting it. I'm totally guilty of that myself. I have not been talking about Bitcoin for the last month on the show. I mean, we have been glancingly here and there. And today we covered Pentagon looking at Bitcoin as a terrorist threat. Holy crap. I thought that was a story from The Onion, but no, it was from Fox. And funny. It's yeah, but okay, you're right. We've been down on it and it hasn't had that enthusiasm that really pushes it and drives it and makes you wonder. But it's, I'm pretty confident in my prediction that the net worth of all cryptocurrencies in circulation will continue to go up at the same general exponential rate over time. It's just, you can't say that about Bitcoin because it's only one cryptocurrency and already, and maybe this is what's exciting about the recent decline, that I want to use a proper term because the mainstream media is going, the demise, the crash. And it's it still has gone from $0 to $450. Hello. So, but the recent decline, it might be a good thing in that it provokes people to look at altcoins, and I don't just mean look at them as other investment or cryptocurrency vehicles, but really look at innovation in other altcoins to see what is the next thing, what can we do to make it more distributed.
Yeah,
and safer.
I mean, you and I are pretty smart, but there's no way we can anticipate what an actual market in currency would look like. I mean, it's been shut down for like 100 years. We have no clue what it will look like when competition comes to real life currency like we're seeing right now. I mean, is there going to be one winner? Are there going to be, 10,000 currencies that are competing with each other? Yeah, we don't know. It's very exciting. I love markets. I love competition, and I love freedom. And to see these forces brought to the whole subject of money and finance and, distributed systems of contracts and this kind of stuff, it's amazing to be alive. It's wonderful to be able to watch it and see what's going to happen.
Well, you say there hasn't been a market for currency for 100 years. I just also want to point out, as someone who thinks it's obscene that the government has taken over manufacturing or paving of roads and made it such a dangerous, destructive environment for everyone, but also kept us stuck in the same technological paradigm there for over 100 years. We have not, as you say, we have not had a market for currencies for 100 years. We have not, really longer than that even, but we have a true market, but we have not had a market for transportation infrastructure for over 100 years. Holy crap. Can you imagine where we would be with that? Anyway, I think
hey, here's another area, Adam. We haven't had a market in like justice services.
No kidding. Well, it's funny. That's actually creeping in. And I know this is like kind of a bad example, but because the government's execution of justice services has been so abysmal, you now have a significant market for third-party arbitration. And it's only in limited cases, and it's totally this unique area carved out from the government monopoly because of radical inefficiency, and it only makes sense in certain situations for people who can afford it, but still, it just goes to show that, like, even with all that, But yeah, imagine if we had...
I mean, our system is so ghastly. I mean, the little bit of time, you spent a lot more time in jail than I have. You have a lot more street cred than I have. But the little time I was there, I was amazed to see like the number of people in prison for failing to pay child support. Now this is idiotic. I mean, what the hell? You don't pay your visa bill. This is not a criminal penalty. What are these people doing in jail? I mean,
well, it'd be one thing if it was a debtor's prison and you could say you're going to work off this debt because you legitimately owe someone this money, and you could justify it in that sense, at least on that one factor. But no, it's just a further drain on society.
Yeah, it's and meanwhile, I don't know if you saw Kathy Reisenwitz had an article like a couple of days ago, or in Reason magazine. It was very interesting. She talked about how like the government created the rape crisis on campus because Title IX specifically said that rape is not a criminal offense. It's like something that should be handled by university administrators. I mean, it was a very interesting article. I didn't even know that. It was totally news to me.
Wow.
But I didn't know that. So here you have.
No, hold on. This is really. Hold on. I got to say, because we have pointed out on the show before, government would rather bust you on the street for smoking pot and having a taillight out than catch a rapist. And the proof is in, they fund that bullshit while there are in Detroit tens of thousands of rape, well no, it was 10,000 and then 4,000 and then 8,000 rape kits sitting in labs that they just haven't allocated funding yet to test. They don't want to prevent real crimes. Like, a real crime that we have to prevent, we have to confront a rapist and deal with that and actually provide justice. No, screw that. We'll just pass that off in the university. You're saying that was part of Title IX.
That was
Holy
part of
crap.
Title IX.
I had no idea.
Kathy, she went through the whole history of this.
Wow.
That it's like embedded, like in universities, why universities don't contact the local cops in these cases or anything. They handle them internally, meaning they don't handle them, because that was part of the Title IX's mandates and requirements. So that's like a federal law. I had no clue about this. And so I'm reading this article, remembering when I was in jail, looking at all the people who didn't pay child support in prison. And meanwhile, we've got the government saying that rapists cannot be treated as criminals. They have to be treated as like some sort of administrative like malfunction that should be addressed sometime in the future. So there you have it. There's the government system of justice.
Yeah. Well, hold on. We just got to hold on, Jeffrey. We've got Larkin Rose waiting on the line here, and we want to bring him on. But I want to give you a chance to tell us, if you would briefly, what is the status of Liberty.me?
Hold up, Adam. I mean, for God's sake. The site has been alive now for 4 days.
Yeah.
It's so friggin' great. I can't believe it. This is a larger, more wonderful machinery than I ever even imagined a year ago when I first started talking to you about this, you know? I mean, the number of quality articles appearing on there, like every hour, the quality of discussions, the chat rooms, the news feeds, the book downloads. I'm watching the analytics. It's just been wonderful. I mean, I hope you have me on again and we can just talk about Liberty Me, because I mean, I wanted to build a city in the sky. Like, I believe in the digital cloud. I believe in commerce. I believe in open source knowledge. And like, I combined all those things into one project, and now it's happening. I mean, I can't be happier. What can I say?
Well, it's good to hear. I thought you were still working up to critical mass momentum, but yes, we will have you back on, and look forward to getting into it and everything that's going on there. Yeah. I know it's a growing community, and for people who want to be part of this great experiment in social networking, it is an amazing publishing platform. I encourage you to check it out, liberty.me. Jeffrey, thank you so much for joining us today.
Wonderful to be here, Adam. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right.
Okay, sorry about that there. When you look at, Google and a lot of these corporations, if, the internet continues to do what it's been doing, I really think that YouTube, Google, and all that's going to go by the wayside. There's other search engines out there that you can use. If you're interested in stuff like that, don't be afraid to look into, creating your own, search engine. We have to create our own alternatives when we feel that, these other companies have become too corrupt. And I think another key to that is doing it in a way that it makes it hard for them to shut it down. Have your preventions. And, nothing's 100%, but with the momentum that I see people pushing for, the freedom definitely on the internet, I think multiple people doing it could definitely overload the system. And you have Jeffrey Tucker, he started liberty.me, and, that's a resource that, more people are looking at. I really do need to get a hold of him, because I talked with Jeffrey in person, and he definitely said he would come on. I have been dealing with quite a bit of stuff lately, so I haven't been able to really schedule any guests right now, and I'm sure a lot of you've noticed I've had to rebroad quite a few shows. Just a lot of personal stuff, and being springtime, trying to get things in the ground. It is just, I've really been kind of over my head in work, and gotta play with the weather. Definitely, got some non-GMO seeds from My Patriot Supply, one of the great advertisers I have on Anti-Tyranny.com. I always love their seeds, because I've never had a problem with them sprouting. So, hopefully, I got I got some of their, normal seeds, and then I also got their, medicinal herb seed vault. So I'm gonna go ahead and test that out. I haven't tried any of their herbs. So I'll let you know how those do. I only got a few in right now. I had one out of the blaze, and I'm gonna, hopefully this will play. But this is, Bill Nye. Let me see what show this was on. If I can find it here. I can't find it here. I think it's on CNN's Crossfire. But this is Bill Nye and S.E. Cupp actually squared off over global warming. And I'm going to try to play this, and hopefully it plays. And then we'll kind of discuss how I feel on the whole global warming debacle, what I like to call it. But let's see if this plays. I'm trying to make sure there's no commercial too. Yep, and there is a commercial, so we'll just keep that muted. I think it's going to go now.
What Van and the White House are saying is all true. The scare tactics have not worked. Check
let me
out.
ask you before you go on.
Well,
You're
no, let
saying
me
it's
finish
not
my
true.
question.
Let's talk about the facts. You're saying that
No,
they're
let
not
me
true.
finish my question, Bill. I want you to take a look at this polling. Only about 36% of Americans think global warming is a serious threat to our way of life. Now, again, let me posit. Everything that Van and the White House have said is true. However, the scare tactics have not worked. And don't you need public consensus to move the needle on this?
So how do you want to get public consensus? By saying that it's not happening, that it's not serious, that shorelines aren't flooding, that we're
No,
not...
I want you to advise the politicians.
advise the
Because
politicians.
they're not, whatever they're doing, whatever Van is doing to scare the public is not changing public
Inform the
opinion.
public, but go right ahead.
Tell us
think
how to
inform-
use the science to actually change public consensus.
Well, you get the message out that this is serious business. And, you know, if you live in Oklahoma, where tornadoes have wiped your town out a couple times, you chose Alaska, which is remote generally, but when you remember Hurricane Sandy, the bottom half of Manhattan was flooded.
Yeah.
The economic effect of that alone is enormous, let alone the rebuilding infrastructure and so on. And we're in the developed world where people can get on the highway and drive. You know, when you say moving a highway 4 feet, it doesn't sound like very much, but you're talking about millions of tons of road that have to be lifted. And that energy has to come from somewhere. And that's just the start of things. And so when we start having crop failures and the drought that's in California continues, the economic cost...
Yeah, well, you can look at these things and you can look at the climate realities. And even this NCA report says that the trend on tornadoes is uncertain. The IPCC report says that the trend on hurricanes is uncertain. We're in the longest hurricane drought. I'm not a denier. I'm not a skeptic. What I'm saying is the climate is changing. Yes, man-made emissions are in some part to that, but we haven't seen these extreme weather event trends. The observed data doesn't prove that.
Well, so I
More
disagree.
importantly is the policy prescriptions, these greenhouse gas regulations coming down, prohibiting building new coal-fired power plants is just going to make us less equipped, less economically prosperous to handle these problems, whether they're, more frequent and more
So
intense
let's
or
just
not.
start with, we don't agree on the facts, right? So this third report came out saying it's very serious. You say no, right? There's the essence of the problem, S.E. Well, the science, the researchers say yes.
Not all the researchers. And again,
hope.
even the IPCC says that there's no frequency or intensity when it comes to hurricanes.
Okay, hurricane, schmurricane, if I may.
This one
sea
says
is
about
getting
tornadoes.
bigger.
That's the same thing.
The
Yeah, sea level
ocean
is
gets
rising,
big.
although it's retracted. It's increasing at a slower rate over the past few years. We've had Arctic ice globally increasing.
Data, I think.
No, not absolutely.
Why did this all come out?
But Bill, isn't it a problem when science guys attempt to bully other people? I mean, Nick here had to say, I'm not a denier. He had to get it up. I'm not a denier, because really, the science group has tried to shame anyone who dares question this. And the point I'm trying to make is it's not working with the public.
And
And that's exactly what you're seeing. Anybody that tries to, go, well, this data is showing that the Earth is cooling, they were like, oh, you're one of those fringe scientists, don't know what you're talking about. No one listened to these people. And then, okay, data is showing that the Earth is cooling. Well, it's not the, global warming, it's climate change. Oh, now it's climate change, not global warming, because it's actually cooling. And then on, and it's, all it is about control, and people like Bill Nye buy right into it. Well, they come out with the new study saying something different whenever it's needed. That's the problem. Where does the funding usually come from? The people that need it. It's just nuts. Okay. This whole global warming stuff, it's just, and then when they're so deceptive about it too, oh, let's go to the warmest time of the year and show the ice melting. Really? And that's your, look, it's global warming. Well, yes, the Earth warms up in certain parts during certain times of the year. Whoop-de-doo, core samples have shown that we've went through ice ages and heat waves for billions of years. But, ignore that. Ignore that. It's because you farted. That's why. And the cows fart, and that's what causes it. The sun doesn't have anything to do with it. The volcanoes erupting don't have anything to do with it. It's definitely the cows farting and you driving your car. That's what's causing it. It's just ridiculous. Okay. Now let me find this other clip. And I think I've kind of found out why. Well, I'm not completely sure why, but there's some funny stuff going on that I think has to do with having problems playing clips. And this one is from Stefan Molyneux, Benghazi attack cover-up, Obama armed Al-Qaeda, ? And here we go.
Molyneux from Free Domain Radio. I'm joined by Roger Aronoff, who's the editor of AIM, or Accuracy in Media, and a member of the Citizens Commission on Benghazi, which recently released a report on April 22nd, of which I guess is the culmination of 7 or 8 months worth of work with some seriously high-powered subject matter experts into Benghazi. Now, Roger, first of all, thanks a lot for taking the time today, but why should people care about Benghazi? The mainstream media narrative is, mistakes were made, but it's in the past, let's move on. Why did your expert and yourselves find it so compelling a story and so important a story to pursue it at this length?
Well, we at AIM, watching this from afar, noticed that the media and Congress were really failing to get to the truth. And we saw this really as sort of a Rosetta Stone that in many ways reveals a lot about the Obama administration, their tendency to lie and cover up things, the fact that they had been working to help the Muslim Brotherhood, and just how the media went along for the ride in the couple months between what happened in Benghazi and the presidential election. So with congressional hearing after congressional hearing and the Accountability Review Board doing their investigation and still getting nowhere, we decided, look, we've got to try to do something. AIM has done this in the past, this sort of thing, but not quite like this one. So we reached out first to retired four-star Admiral James Lyons, who I knew had an interest in the subject, and I had interviewed him for a show that I did. And he was more than happy, eager to join us. And then we reached out to several others, some retired generals. Today we have about more than 15 of us, including 4 former CIA officers, generals, admirals, colonels, a former member of the House, the former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee is with us. So we have quite a group that's put together, really a lot of expertise that goes way beyond my expertise. But I was fortunate to bring these people together, and it's been a great team and a great effort.
Well, the general narrative which emerged immediately afterwards, after the September 11th, 2012 attacks on Benghazi, the key narrative seems to have been that there was this amateur internet video, that caused the spontaneous demonstrations and aggressions and so on. And this, although this seemed to have been denied by the CIA, this was what the administration stuck to. And the emails that have recently come to light as a result of Judicial Watch's lawsuit, basically forcing a federal court to force the Obama administration to hand over the emails, it appears to be that Susan Rice, who was sent on these Sunday shows to talk about Benghazi, stuck to the point that it was spontaneous demonstrations that turned violent as a result of an internet video that Muslims found offensive. And they said, we need to stick to this narrative in order to avoid discussion or revealing the failures of larger foreign policy decisions. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what this nonsense, this sort of side-swiping piñata light show of distraction for the masses, what foreign policy decisions were they specifically trying to get the media to avoid, which tragically the media has complied in avoiding?
Well, at the time, as you recall, this was the middle of a presidential campaign, and they had been pushing this line that Al-Qaeda had been decimated, that GM was succeeding and Al-Qaeda was decimated, and of course taking great pride in the fact that bin Laden had been killed during their time. But so what this would destroy that narrative if the fact that Al-Qaeda operatives were so strong in areas like this that they could overrun a U.S. special mission compound. A lot of people call it an embassy or a consulate. It really wasn't either of those. And there was the CIA annex about a mile away from there. But clearly what happened is this was a well-planned attack with mortars, and the fact that what had happened before there, we had been hit a couple times before. The British had been hit and pulled out. The Red Cross had pulled out. There were, as we later came to find out, there was a cable, most notably the August 16th cable sent by Chris Stevens, pleading for additional security. In the meantime, they were reducing the security, and we were protected by a group out of Wales, Blue Mountain, which part of the contract was that they were not armed. The only armed security we had was the February 17th Martyrs Brigade, which was basically an Al-Qaeda linked group. It's really quite incredible. And so the idea that this video sort of gave them an excuse to cover the whole thing by saying, look, this is what happened in Cairo and it spilled over here and it was demonstrations that kind of got out of hand. And as we know now, Hillary released a statement at 10 o'clock that night while the attack was still going on, blaming the video. And this continued on for a couple of weeks. Later on, of course, Obama was saying, no, I said it was a terrorist act from day one. Go look, Candy Crowley, look at the transcript, pull it while he was in the middle of the debate with Romney. So he really has tried to have it both ways, claiming when it's convenient that he's always called it a terrorist act, and at other times claiming this wasn't, that it was a spontaneous demonstration that got out of hand based on this video.
Yeah, because of course a lot of people go to their spontaneous demonstrations with mortars and RPGs. It's typical, obviously, if it's a party night. So, I mean, I really want to sort of circle back for a sec, because this is something that as I dug into it, is so astounding and incredible to me. That, first of all, the security detail out of Wales, which themselves seem to have had a lot of credibility and licensing issues, to say the least, that they were disarmed, but this, I think the 17th February Brigade was armed, but also may have been infiltrated, or maybe there's evidence that they were infiltrated by members of Al-Qaeda. In other words, the only people who were armed and guarding the American ambassador during a time of civil war and chaos and endless threats. He just received a death threat over Facebook from Al-Qaeda, that the only people armed and protecting him were members of Libyan rebel or militia groups. And you're saying that they had been somewhat infiltrated by Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, more than somewhat infiltrated. And this is where the story takes an interesting turn, and kind of the two main things that were not known that we released at our press conference last week. And you can go to aim.org and you can see it, or aim.org/Benghazi, which is the website for the Citizens Commission on Benghazi. But actually, this war did not need to occur, because at the time, and the first person who spoke at our press conference was a retired Rear Admiral, Chuck Kubik, who had been an admiral, active duty during Iraq and Afghanistan, and now he was retired, and he was CB, and he stayed behind doing building projects, and he was in Libya, and the Libyans came to him and said, look, they're about to start bombing us, and NATO's going to bomb us, and, let's see if we can negotiate something. And under a white flag of truce, he was Gaddafi, who by no means was an angel, as we know. Pan Am 103, the LaBelle Disco, there's so many things going back over years, but he had also, when Saddam was captured, had given up his WMD. He was basically fighting the same side we were in the war on terror. He was fighting Al-Qaeda, and so he offered now to leave. He would, if he could be given refuge somewhere, and this Admiral Kubik was the intermediary, and he went to AFRICOM, talked to Colonel Linville, and then that went to Carter Ham, who was the general in charge of AFRICOM, who took this to Washington, and he was waiting for several days. And it was during this time that Hillary Clinton announced that we were giving our support to the Transitional National Council, which was Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood related, and we knew this. We knew who these people were. And our expert on this is not me, but it is Claire Lopez, a 20-something year CIA officer. And you can watch again on this video and see her and her credentials, and she knows this. She knows every one of these people, the names, the whole history of the Muslim Brotherhood, which of course started in Egypt in 1928. The Libyan Muslim Brotherhood was 1949. And who all these people were, the ones that they were driven out from Libya and they went to Afghanistan, and some were caught and held at Gitmo and then released and went back. So what happened is, this offer of abdication was there, and it was refused by the political leaders in Washington, and then the war proceeded. Tens of thousands of lives lost that really didn't have to happen. The other big thing that happened at that time was that we basically supported and facilitated the transfer of arms that were sold out of East Europe, went to Qatar, which was sort of the depot, and it was financed by UAE, $1 billion worth that was shipped to the Libyan rebels. And this was at a time when NATO controlled land and sea access to Libya. So clearly we controlled the flow. And there's an article, some of this is open source, December 5th, 2012 New York Times article that goes into the detail and how we were very concerned that it was going to be seen that we were helping Al-Qaeda rebels, in our effort to topple Gaddafi. And one thing that Kubik points out is that this so-called humanitarian crisis that we were trying to prevent, Gaddafi had pulled his troops back from the border of Misrata and Benghazi just, while this 72-hour period was going on. And as Kubik said, he thought our Nobel Peace Prize winning president would give peace a chance, but they didn't.
So he withdrew his troops from Benghazi, Gaddafi, on the assumption that he would be allowed to leave the country, that sanctions would be removed from him, and this is one of the things that exposed Benghazi to these militias. And as you point out, $500 million worth of arms during a time when NATO, headed by the U.S., had a no-fly zone and was in control of all the ports and control of all of the roads going in and out of Libya. And so there's no way that $500 million worth of arms could have gone through Qatar and the UAE into Libya without the express knowledge and permission of the NATO forces, and end up in the rebels, again, which are woven in with Al-Qaeda. I don't know if anyone knows the degree to which Al-Qaeda and the rebels were synonymous, but this idea that these weapons were going to enemies of Gaddafi, but not going towards Al-Qaeda, strains credulity to a significant degree.
Well, that's exactly right. That you just laid it out perfectly, and that is really what happened. And we did know people like Belhaj and Bin Kumu and these people who, again, I don't know all the cast of characters as well as some of our experts on our commission, but yes, clearly these were Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood working together. And, you can go back to 2009, shortly after Obama came into the White House, in his Cairo speech, where he welcomed the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood and not the leader of the country. And there were signs of that. And so, yeah, this was the scenario when, we come back to, September of 2012, near the anniversary of 9/11, and coming back into, Benghazi, and this situation emerged.
And it seems, one of the great tragedies is sort of wrong place, wrong time in history. Had this not been in the run-up to the election, to the presidential election, things might have gone a little bit differently. But it seems to me, and tell me what your thoughts are, it seems to me that almost everything about Benghazi was narrative shattering when it came to the president and his claims. And not just his claims, but even the claims of those who'd come before him. Number one, of course, was that the war on terror was won. You got bin Laden, and he used the phrase decimated, which in its original form meant only 10% reduced. Sure. But he used decimated on the run, on the ropes, that Al-Qaeda was toast, they were done, and therefore that the war on terror and the massive sacrifice of blood and treasure made by the American public and, unfortunately, the unborn future American debt holders, that this massive sacrifice that I think at the time was passing the cost for America of World War II, that this massive sacrifice had been worth it and that the war was essentially won. And of course, if the amount of mayhem that was able to be executed on American personnel, ex-Navy SEALs, the ambassador in Benghazi, that would shatter the narrative of winning the war on terror. Number two, of course, is that Al-Qaeda is always presented in the American media as like great enemy number one, like number one, worst guys ever, no matter what. But it seems to me, if you look at it objectively, Al-Qaeda is on this revolving door of like frenemies, you know, friends, enemies. Of course, they were brought in. The Mujahideen were brought in, and you can see pictures of them meeting with Reagan in the 80s, brought in to fight the Soviets in Afghanistan in the 1980s, and they were trained. Here's how you bring down an empire. What you do is you continue to draw them into unwinnable wars, and you crack their treasury, and you break their capacity for foreign occupations. And this is what the CIA taught the Mujahideen, and there's, of course, rumors that bin Laden himself received CIA training. So then they were our friends. And then they were also the friends of America in Serbia and Kosovo when it came time to wage that conflict. And then, of course, 9/11, they became the enemies. And here again, they become the friends. It's not, black and white. And I think that's another narrative that Benghazi and a full explication and understanding of what happened in Benghazi is really hard for people to process, because it does take that black and white narrative and make it terrifyingly nuanced.
Well, yes, there's a lot there that you said. Some I would agree with, some not. But look, as of today, there's big news, which is that John Boehner has consented to allow this select committee to be formed in the House, and surprisingly, they're allowing Trey Gowdy to head it up. At least that's the reports as of today. I look at this cautiously and know the devil is in the details and want to see how this plays out. But if that's what happens with Trey Gowdy as the a former prosecutor, this should really be interesting, because I don't think he will let it go. And I think there is going to be such a resistance from the White House. But this is something, there have been 190 Republican members of the House out of about 232 who had signed on to Frank Wolf's H.R. 36 calling for this select committee, and Boehner and leadership had resisted it up until now. And with our event last week, and got quite a bit of attention, the Daily Mail covered it, and it was on Drudge, and we had a lot of coverage, and then this news from Judicial Watch, and this document that got released really just created this massive sort of push now. But I still was, I think we were all very surprised, very pleased to see that, Boehner has come around on this, because there was concern that, look, one issue is for all the different committee chairmen, they want to protect their committees and their stature as chairman of a committee, as opposed to being just one person on this. But now what happens is, instead of the 5-minute rule, where you really, sometimes they can just drag it out and you get one question, now it's more like a deposition. And you get to, there's no time limits. And then as far as their access to classified material should be greater than it was. And it's going to be very interesting, because we remember Watergate and, the resistance and saying, no, we're not turning that over, executive privilege. And, ultimately this could wind up in the Supreme Court deciding certain aspects of this, if the White House is going to be forced to turn things over or not. So this is going to be a very interesting confrontation.
Now, some groups, I can't remember if your group has or not, but some groups have suggested that the White House, through redacting information and through not cooperating with Congress, the congressional inquiries, and through lying to these congressional inquiries, that the White House has engaged in deceitful or even criminal behavior. I wonder if you could help people understand why some people are making that case. Because, with Nixon, of course, they weren't for smoking bodies on the floor. It was third-rate burglary. These kinds of wiretappings had been performed by both parties throughout most of American history, ever since really the invention of the capacity to wiretap. This seems quite different. And why do you think people are saying that this really could be criminal activity on the part of the White House?
Well, because just for this reason, they have been deceptive since day one. First, again, as I was mentioning before, coming up with this rationale, this excuse that it was this video when they knew all along it wasn't. The chief of station in the CIA told them from day one, from the opening, the minutes while this was still going on, they were told, Carter Ham, the head of AFRICOM, told Leon Panetta and Martin Dempsey, and they went right into the White House and told them that this was a planned terrorist attack. So there you have total lying to the American people. And then there's this question of having knowingly sent arms to Al-Qaeda related groups. Now that's totally against the law. And I'm not saying that they violated the law because perhaps there was a presidential directive signed and then someone would rule that carried had more weight than what the law said. So, that's why this is important. I mean, we did not have, as the Citizens Commission on Benghazi, did not have subpoena power. But these people do, and they can force these people to testify under oath, and if they're found to be lying, they can be convicted of perjury. So the stakes are going to be very high in this. But for all the reasons, look, that they were faced with, if we acknowledge what happened here, Obama very well may have felt he was going to lose the election. And so they crafted this story and stuck with it. And for us, again, accuracy in media, I mean, there were all these moments during that period. You had on September 12th, right after he gave his Rose Garden appearance, where he used the term act of terror, but it wasn't specifically tied to the Benghazi thing. He then went on and did an interview with Steve Croft of 60 Minutes, and Croft asked him, you seem reluctant to call this an act of terrorism or to use the word terrorism. He said, well, we don't know yet. We're still investigating and still looking at it. Now, CBS did not even release that piece of video until they released it 2 days before the presidential election. They just quietly put it up on a blog site, and they could have answered this question all along. For instance, during that debate, when Romney said, that told him that he didn't call it a terrorist act, and he said, oh, yes, I did, and look at the transcript, and conveniently Candy Crowley had it. So there's all these things where the media were complicit, and they didn't do their job leading up to the election. That's because they generally wanted Obama to get reelected. There's no question about it.
How do you think this is, obviously putting on our prognostication helmets, so this is a perilous business and you're released from all liability when it comes to the accuracy of these. But when you look at Hillary Clinton's run for the presidency, which seems almost an inevitability at this point, she has a role in this. I mean, Ambassador Stevens reached out to the State Department, and she appears to have been on the email list of recipients for additional security. And I think even putting additional security in is a way of saying Al-Qaeda has strength, Al-Qaeda has power, we're worried, we're concerned, which contradicts, again, the narrative that the war is won and kumbaya, give peace a chance stuff. How do you think that the Benghazi narrative is going to play into the next round of the run of the White House, in particular with Hillary Clinton?
Well, I think what's going to happen is that the media are going to primarily try to continue to protect Hillary. I mean, we had this famous New York Times piece on December 30th of last year, David Kirkpatrick, and he basically said, look, and this was viewed as kind of the establishing the story for Hillary and trying to put an end to it and to say, oh, in fact, the YouTube video was a factor and there was no Al-Qaeda involvement in this. So that's what they tried to say, and they really just released a firestorm from people who just, like us, who completely took apart his story. But I think the media are going to continue to try to protect Hillary, to make this seem to be just a partisan witch hunt on the part of the Republicans, that they have nothing going for them, so they're just doing this, and that it's a phony scandal. And that's been the line, and I cannot see them changing it at this point. So the question is, will that part of the media win out? I mean, I think we're seeing that several people, having caught them. I mean, one guy, a mainstream media guy, Ron Fournier, yesterday referred to Jay Carney as being like Baghdad Bob, which he was up there trying to say that, you know, with this document, even though this was FOIA'd about Benghazi, and we presented it and it was given to them as a Benghazi FOIA, it wasn't about Benghazi at all. It was about all the other demonstrations that were going on. And
even though, sorry to interrupt, but even though the memos refer to American lives lost, which only happened in Benghazi, he's saying it's not about Benghazi. It's really Alice in Wonderland stuff.
Right. Well, he said it said lives lost. It wasn't just American lives. That's what he said. So, yeah, it was so absurd that even most of the people in the White House press room weren't buying it.
Right. So I wonder if I could put on my left-wing prostitute's hat for a moment and fire a couple of questions at you that I'm sure will be coming from the media to try and dampen this scandal down in the Democratic run-up to the next election. I wonder if you could just give me your soundbite responses to these kinds of objections to the information that you and your group is putting forward. Okay. What does it matter, in the famous words of Hillary Clinton, what does it matter at this point why it started or what happened?
It matters greatly because it reveals so much about this administration, their embrace of the Muslim Brotherhood, of their willingness to allow arms, to facilitate arms going to Al-Qaeda, to their tendency to lie and cover up. Look, I think a lot of people view this as far worse than Watergate and anything that happened there.
Or Iran-Contra is another one that sort of springs to mind, which is far less egregious.
Exactly. And so, yeah, this is huge in terms of both the actions. Look, here's the other thing, and this is the main thing that drew the people to our commission, I believe, and that is that they view what happened on that day as dereliction of duty. In other words, Admiral Lyons, who was the commander-in-chief of the Pacific when he was in the Navy, pointed out, and he's talked to the people, and he knows people and very directly involved. I mean, there was a 130-man Marine force at Sigonella, which is a naval air station on Sicily, that could have been there within an hour. There were other assets, military bases, and they should have been prepared, knowing what was going on. There'd been all the warnings. How could we not send the military assets that we had available to at least try to rescue these people? And, you know, President Obama says that his first order was do everything you can to go save those people. Nothing happened. So did Panetta, did they ignore his orders, or did he really not give that order? So these are the questions that need to be answered. And look, if it came down like it looks like it did, yeah, who knows what's in store. I mean, the idea of impeaching the first black president is so controversial. I don't think that will happen, but maybe it will just be a stain on his legacy and history, and, you know, he'll be allowed to finish out his presidency. And we don't know, you know, where this is leading, and it is, you know, heading right into a political season with the 24 elections coming up. First of all, we don't yet know how long it's going to take to organize this select committee, and, you know, what kind of tug of war it's going to be to get certain people to come testify. So there's really a lot of things yet to be determined. But again, we see this as, you know, a scandal on so many levels. the things that I've talked about, letting that war go on in the first place, allowing the arms to flow to Al-Qaeda, failing to beef up the security or pulling our people out of there beforehand. All of these things, the dereliction of duty on the day of, and then the immediate cover-up mode that went on. So there are so many angles to this thing.
Right. Now, the second question, of course, is the sort of it's the defense that the British gave about Czechoslovakia in 1938, which was, well, we couldn't really have done anything. I mean, and I guess you pointed out that there were forces less than an hour away. Even sending in fighter jets at low level, even if they weren't armed, would have probably scattered some people. There's lots of things that could have been done. So I guess that question has been answered. Of course, the third major objection to any kind of questions around these issues is the issue of national security and the idea that you lowly proles are not cleared for these kinds of sensitive data. And what would your response be to the defense of national security?
We have put together an incredible commission of people that I urge you to go to our website again, aim.org/Benghazi, look under the members, look at the biographies of these people. These have been some of the most incredible patriots and people who have given so much for this country and care about this country. And these are not political people. They may have become more political in recent time, but they are just so concerned about national security of this country, watching what's happening. In other words, as we stood there on the brink of the war with Libya, President Obama stood up and said, we don't stand by while people are getting killed. Yet look at Syria, 150,000 now. And then what's going on, the Ukrainians were urged and convinced to give up their weapons and that the U.S. and NATO would stand behind them if anything happened with Russia. And, they see there's nothing happening there. So I think, there's a piece by Leon Wesseltier in the New Republic that really goes into the fact of Obama a weak U.S. is just a huge problem throughout the world. People no longer feel the confidence that we're going to come to their aid. The Russians don't fear us. It's what's going on with China and their threats to, the Philippines, Japan. There's just so much uncertainty and fear in the world now that there is not the strong U.S. force that was once there. And admittedly, made mistakes, but when we've gone into these wars, it's generally been to liberate, to help, and then to get out. We don't go in to take over countries, and our history's been that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I lean a little bit more towards the isolationist approach, but that perhaps is a debate for another time. So the last question I have compared to Watergate, which was political chicanery followed by foolish avoidance, and according to some theories, was payback from the artistic and journalistic community for Nixon's involvement in the McCarthy hearings. But there was a ferocious press who were really, really going after a president, full tilt boogie. It's hard to imagine how this scandal, if it plays out the way that I certainly expect it to play out, which is where more and more egregious information is provided, or, there's this blank stone wall which indicates that the egregious information is being hidden. Without an aggressive press, it really seems hard to figure out how this administration can be cornered into coughing up some truth. But again, at the same time, seeing the reporters go after Jim Carney for his obvious mealy-mouthed deceptions, at least in my view, was quite a revelation that they seem to have reached the limit of their endurance for, speak with two tongues, doublespeak. Do you think that the press is going to actually pursue this story? It seems hard to believe when the head of CBS is the brother of the security analyst who first talked about first started massaging the talking points. Do you think that the press is going to go for this story, or do you think there's going to be complicit in the whitewash?
Well, I think the media is going to continue to treat it as a Fox News story. That's the way they like to label it. And I do not see NBC and CBS and ABC and the New York Times and Washington Post. You know, look, the Washington Post sometimes they're more so than those others, that they're willing to dive in, and even if it goes against the people that they like, I will give them more credit than those others. But I would be very surprised to see if the others appear to turn on him, as opposed to trying. I mean, they've tried to avoid this story like the plague. I mean, even with the stuff that came out yesterday and this week, and with our material, it was amazing. I mean, CNN was at our press conference. They didn't do a peep about it. And the New York Times, and we specifically sought them out and went to them and tried to get someone from the Post was supposed to be there, and they canceled at the last minute. And, so they are hoping so much that this will stay buried and viewed as a partisan issue and a Fox News story. But I'm afraid the tide of history is flowing the other way, and the media, they're going to continue to try to help Obama and Hillary in this, and whether they can succeed. When you see the numbers for Obama in particular, I don't know that they're going to succeed with this. And I think Hillary's got a lot to worry about. She may yet decide not to run by the time these hearings are over.
Well, I guess we'll see. So, again, thank you so much, Roger, for taking the time, and of course for all the work that the Commission has done. If you would just like to repeat the website for my listeners to go and have a look at this information, which I strongly urge you to do. I mean, as you pointed out, either the civilian head of the military had no idea of the status of the war on terror, or they were deliberately lying to the American people about the status of the war on terror in order to win an election. I'm not sure which is worse. Ignorance where you should know, or lying about things where you do know. It is important for people to look at this information to get a real sense of where the political machinery is at the moment. So if you could just repeat your website, make sure people can get access to the information, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. It's AIM.org. That stands for Accuracy in Media. We've been around since 1969, the original media watchdog. And the separate website, which you find if you go to AIM.org, is AIM.org/Benghazi. That is the website for the Citizens Commission on Benghazi. And there's a lot of material on there. I urge you to look at it, the interim report, and with the additional documents. I think it will really stun a lot of people, and I hope they will take some time to go through the material. And I thank you so much for your show and for what you're doing and for having me on and a chance to talk about this.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we'll talk again. Take care.
Okay. Thank you.
And that was Stefan Molyneux. And, the whole Benghazi thing, it's really kind of blown up now. And, he was speaking with, I think that was, Roger Arnoff. I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but he's from the Citizens Commission on Benghazi. And one person that was talking about this, really when it kind of went down was, Jim Funky here on UCY.TV. And actually his, broadcast is coming up tonight. So, stay tuned. That'll be right after Try This at Home with Dana Martin, which is right after this broadcast. So 2 great broadcasts coming up. Definitely stay tuned. But, what are you hearing out of the White House? What are the main things that you're hearing out of the White House on Benghazi? it's just BS and kind of just blowing it off like, well, no, you got it all wrong. You don't know what you're talking about. They completely will not own up to it. So, you really have to ask yourself, what's going on? Is this all for show, or, there's a lot of questions surrounding it, and it's really hard to figure out exactly what they're trying to accomplish. Give me a second here. Hopefully I have. Okay, looks like I have the right one here. Seems if you try to search for Pigmine on YouTube, it doesn't show up at all anymore, so I had to look it up under my subscriptions. I thought I seen one here of some of the BS coming out of the White House. But I'm also having to search through quite a bit. If you've ever seen Pigmine, YouTube /Pigmine5, MINE5, he really does keep up with the news, the mainstream. He reposts what the mainstream's putting out. And it's crazy what they will come out and try to say. Okay. I'm not finding the one I thought he posted. I was pretty sure it came from him. But, just a consistent line coming out of the White House. You have to look at it all. Just be like, there's no way anybody should be able to buy into this anymore. It's complete corruption, and it's really out in the open. They got so relaxed on hiding what they're doing, and then when it comes out in the open, then they want to, clamp down on it, and that right there is what really sparks a nation anymore. When it's so obvious anymore. And people are they're just not buying into it. Which they shouldn't be. And I'm still not seeing it. A lot of Ukraine stuff, and I don't know if you've seen the reports of Russian jets flying near the California coastline, like a show of force. That's according to what we're being told. How true it is, I'm not sure. But that's what we're being told is, Russia was showing some force, and, the simple fact that all of this is going on, that Ukraine is picking sides and not being independent, That's what really just kind of troubles me when you look at it like that. We're not seeing anybody, really fighting for true freedom. At least what we're seeing, we're not seeing it. There could be, groups over there that are fighting for actual freedom, and of course media on either side, is not going to, let you in on that. I do have one right here that I think I might play. Maybe, if it'll load. And, since we're kind of on that military side of everything, this one is from RT, but I'm getting it from Pick Mine. The Pentagon's botched projects. That seems like it would be interesting to see exactly what wasteful spending on war that we have going on right now. So let me go ahead and cue this up.
When it comes to taxpayer money, perhaps no agency knows how to spend it quicker than the U.S. military.
The Pentagon, left to its own devices, will spend money on anything.
Over the past decade, defense spending has claimed a bigger part of the federal budget, with aggressions ramping up first in Afghanistan and then Iraq. In fact, the United States spends more money on defense than the next 10 countries combined. President Obama and Congress set the military spending cap for 2015 at $496 billion, leaving plenty of room for all new top-of-the-line equipment. With all of that spending, government watchdogs don't have to look hard to find waste.
A lot of money has been wasted in Afghanistan and Iraq. Weapons systems being sent over, facilities being built that weren't needed. The Special Inspector General for Afghanistan and the Special Inspector General for Iraq have identified at least $100 billion worth of wasteful spending.
Senator Tom Coburn's annual government waste book highlighted some of the starkest examples of lavish spending by the military in recent years, including the Air Force's C-27J Spartan, an airplane that can take off and land on unpaved runways.
My favorite point program in this is the fact that the Air Force bought $600 million worth of airplanes, and as soon as they were delivered and shipped them to the deserts.
The military has spent a reported $567 million on the project since 2007. However, a 2013 report by the Gachem Daily News found that at least a dozen of these transporter planes were moving straight from the assembly line to a storage unit in Tucson, Arizona, without having ever been flown on a military mission.
They were built, finished, and never used them. They've been shipped to a graveyard in Arizona. They're not going to be used. Why were they built? Solely because of the opening of jobs in Ohio and a contractor who was pitching for those jobs. The Pentagon, in that case, didn't want them.
So rather than leaving the transporter planes in the desert to rust, Congress has directed the Department of Defense to give 14 of them to the U.S. Coast Guard for free. But the C-27J wasn't the military's only fiscal fiasco. After spending 3 years and nearly $300 million on a state-of-the-art surveillance blimp, the Army finally decided to deflate the project for good. The long-endurance multi-intelligence vehicle was nicknamed the Unblinking Eye for its ability to fly unmanned surveillance missions for 3 weeks at a time. However, a number of delays in the release date, along with overspending on parts, caused the project to be scrapped in 2013 and the blimp to be sold back to the contractor for 1/1000th of the price.
It's time for adult leadership to come in and say, I know you really like that bright shiny object over there, and it's really sexy, but I don't think you need it, and we need to rethink why we're spending money on that.
But Tom Schatz from Citizens Against Government Waste says Congress is also to blame for unnecessary spending.
Members of Congress often view the Pentagon budget as a jobs budget. There's often resistance by members of Congress who feel that the jobs in their districts or the companies in their districts need to continue building something that really may not do anything to enhance national security.
Schatz points to the M1 Abrams tank as the best example of the battle between military leaders and Washington lawmakers.
General Orgiano has testified that they don't need more tanks. They need to instead take a few years, modernize the tanks. In 2017, and save $3 billion.
But when it comes to Washington's wallet,
Congress wins. Congress controls the purse strings. Congress can force the Pentagon to continue developing a system that it does not want. In the private sector, there wouldn't be any question. If something is obsolete or not being sold, plant gets closed. In Washington, unfortunately, decisions are not always that rational.
But not everyone agrees with that assessment. Four-star General Don Allen, a former commander of the coalition forces in Afghanistan, says Congress has always supported the troops to the best of its ability.
The Congress, on behalf of the American people, have been extraordinary in providing the leadership and providing our troops everything they need to accomplish in this moment.
Waste is not unique to any particular branch of the military. However, with the Afghanistan war winding down, perhaps the Pentagon will finally get its fiscal house in order. In Washington, Megan Lopez, RT.
Wasteful spending. How about maybe all of the wars? Those are kind of wasteful. Innocent lives, all of the above. It seems like, yeah, it's all wasteful. Excuse me there. I have one here out of Ben Swan. And this is, quite frankly, an institution that we definitely need to get rid of. That's the EPA. They're not about saving the earth. You can throw that out the window. Right here, EPA accused of impeding independent investigations. The EPA has been accused by the Inspector General's office of thwarting investigation into allegations of misconduct and functioning as a rogue law enforcement agency, according to testimony on Wednesday. Same thing the BLM is doing. I'm very concerned that vital information regarding suspected employee misconduct is being withheld from the OIG, said Assistant Inspector General Patrick Sullivan in testimony of the House Oversight Committee. Assistant Inspector General Patrick Sullivan testified that a unit inside the EPA, the Office of Homeland Security, has been blocking Inspector General's office's attempts to investigate multiple accusations involving employee misconduct. The small unit is governed by the Office of EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy. The Inspector General's office shared examples of misconduct complaints with the Oversight Committee, including a case in which an employee suffering from multiple sclerosis was allegedly paid $600,000 over 5 years to work from home, but did not actually work. When an investigation began, the employee retired. In another complaint, an employee was paid for over a year or more after moving to a retirement home and also allegedly produced no work for that time period. The employee was placed on sick leave after an investigation began. Elizabeth Heller Drake, another Inspector General, testified that the EPA asked her to cease investigation into an Office of Homeland Security employee after he allegedly assaulted Drake. In prepared testimony, Sullivan wrote that under the heavy cloak of national security, the Office of Homeland Security has repeatedly rebuffed and refused to cooperate with the OIG's ongoing requests for information or cooperation. House Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chairman Darrell Issa echoed, "It's disturbing that even investigations by this administration's own nonpartisan watchdogs are being blocked by political appointees." The EPA Deputy Administrator Bob Perkosby said the EPA is devoted to the Inspector General's office and its mission to investigate waste, misconduct, and fraud. He testified that Wednesday's allegations are not the norm. Sure. That's yet to be seen, I think. Okay, while I'm here on Ben Swan, I'll grab another one. And this one, another victory for libertarians. Libertarian invited to Florida's biggest gubernatorial debate. Just like in South Carolina, where the state Libertarian Party went to the state Supreme Court to secure third-party ballot access, there has been another major victory for liberty lovers. This time it's in Florida, where Libertarian gubernatorial candidate Adrian Willey received an official invitation to the state's largest and most watched gubernatorial debate. Typically, invitations are given to candidates that are polling high, and depending on which poll you look at, Willey is polling anywhere between 4 and 16%. The polling has been all over the map, Willey told Ben Swan on the Ben Swan radio show on May 1st. Willey explained that typically polls turn out to super Republican and super Democrats, and if that's the case, Willey polls low. But when you look at an undecided and disenfranchised voters looking for hope, Willey's numbers shoot up. I think the critical key is the thousands of grassroots supporters who contacted the pollsters, contacted the media, contacted the locations hosting the debates, and demanded my inclusion, he said. I can't thank them enough. He said that the people are tired of the two-party duopoly. The liberty movement in general is exploding right now, he added. People are getting fed up and they're looking for a solution beyond the two-party system. The Libertarian Party is now in the position to provide that solution. According to Willey, the Republican and Democrat voting bases are in decline in Florida. The Libertarian Party is growing at a phenomenal rate here in Florida. Current Republican Governor Rick Scott is seeking re-election, but also former Republican Charlie Crist is running as well, but as a Democrat. That's the irony there, said Willey. He said the race includes a progressive Republican governor and a progressive Republican former governor and me. These guys are virtually identical on policy, and those policies are not good for the people of Florida, he added. This race will continue to be an interesting one, Willey explained. I'm in this race to win, but if I don't, and I come up short, one thing is clear is that the Republican governor is going to lose. It's either going to be a current Republican governor or the former Republican governor. Either way, it doesn't matter. The end result will be the same. The event scheduled for Wednesday, October 15th at Fort Lauderdale's Broward College is hosted by Leadership Florida, and the Florida Press Association will be broadcast by WPBF 25 in West Palm Beach and will be televised throughout Florida on 11 channels. And that is from Ben Swan. So that, that is great news for, Libertarian and third party candidate there in Florida. And, pointing out that it's a former Republican governor and a current Republican governor. That's your choice other than a Libertarian candidate. And, we constantly point out, they are the same party, Democrats and Republicans. It's just, what side do you want to be on and who's going to win the fight of control over your life. That's what the main fight is, and people buy into it and sell themselves, basically, I think. Very, very rarely do you see anybody that's actually talking about taking that power away from government and someone that's, been talking about that ever get any attention. But a lot of people are looking at third parties now, and you got Free and Equal and what they're doing right now. It's really becoming something big, and people are breaking out of that two-party system, that fallacy of choice. And we need to continue to spread, the message of liberty, continue to expose corruption and challenge the status quo. To talk about, hey, there's a theory out there that says that one flawed human being doesn't have the moral authority to rule over another flawed human being. That this concept is a outdated caveman concept. That if we are intelligent human beings, that to buy into the concept that, well, you can vote someone's freedom away and their rights away, that one flawed human being has that right to do it to another flawed human being, is a idiotic concept. And it buys into control over others. It buys into your worst nightmares. Those bad movies that you're just like, oh, I hope that never happens. It's happening right now. And we have to break that paradigm. And there's so many people out there anymore. And, it's really growing in the movement to break out of this system. And I think it's growing worldwide. And that's why I say, even though we don't know, exactly what's going on over in the Ukraine, we'll probably, not have an actual correct answer to it. But there could be people over there that actually do want true freedom. And we just have to keep hoping that that's the truth and that they continue to fight. This choosing sides over, former, communist Soviet Russia or current socialist, fascist Europe, communist, you call it whatever, they're all in the same grouping. I think it's a lose. So it doesn't make sense to me. And I hope, people start waking up to, hey, you're being played. In the end, in the end, you're being played as a pawn. And you have to understand that. If you allow people to rule over you, you will be ruled over. And as a nation and as a world, we've been allowing people to rule over us for way too long. We should be intelligent enough, after everything we've done as a, human race, that we can start breaking this, fallacy that one flawed human being has the moral ability to rule over another flawed human being. You know, that's something that needs to be shared more. And when anybody really comes to argue a point of government, that should be the major point right there that you put forward. And that one thing alone can stop a lot of people in their tracks when it comes to trying to start an argument. And when you look at global warming, scientists disagree. But Bill Nye says, well, this report. What about this report? No, this report came out. This is facts because this says what I want it to say. Is there changing? Maybe. It's always changing. What kind of change? I don't know. It's always changing. When volcanoes put out more emissions than we can do in years, within a day, I can't say that it's the humans that are doing this and your cows farting. I don't think this is causing global warming. Oh, I meant global cooling, climate change, whatever you want to call it today. Whatever wording suits what the weather's doing. Never mind the sun, never mind volcanoes, never mind the natural order of Earth, the moon, all that playing a factor. No, never mind that, it's you. It's you, that little dot on the planet, that's causing the problem. But if you pay some globalists some money, they'll make it all go away. They will. They'll just make it disappear. Well, how? How will they do that? Well, because you gave them money. That's how they'll do it. Because when they get more money, things go away. Because they can go, hey, CNN, now that we're getting all their money, put out a little thing that says, hey, you know, global warming's being saved. We're saving the earth now. If we could get another 10% of your earnings, we think we could end it by, 2040. Then 5 years later, oh, we need another 10% and we'll have it by, 2045. And so. And, it's just another sham, like most of what the globalists push. We know this. I want to thank UCY Broadcasting Network that you can catch Anti-Tyranny News Radio on. It's been a great platform, and I love being on UCY. Great host, great viewpoints out there. We don't always agree on everything, but we respect each other, and I respect the host on UCY, and it's always great to hear different views. Very diverse group here on UCY, so I think that's what this network brings that other networks don't. The ability to hear multiple points of views on a lot of these issues. Coming up next, Try This at Home with Dana Martin, and always great information there. And then after that, we have Jim Funky, Boiler Room Radio, another great broadcast. And, he was one of them that early on, he was saying Benghazi is going to be the thing that can bring down the administration. And I think he was correct on that. And, good call. And, that's why it's great to have multiple views, because, I did see Benghazi as a big issue. I didn't think it would actually be something that could bring down the administration. I didn't see it going that far. But it looks like that's where it's headed. We'll still have to wait and see. And just stay tuned to all the great broadcasts here on UCY.TV. And thanks for joining me, and I will see you Friday. Take care.